Living in the right key. I love what George Bernard Shaw says. He talks about that when he says, in the right key, you can say anything. In the wrong key, nothing. The delicate part of life is establishing the key. Now, I want you to think about this. By the right key, I mean harmony, I mean unity, I mean where things are working together. So if you have an unresolved conflict with somebody, you're not in the right key. Until you resolve that conflict, you can try to say anything you want, but it just won't work. And people might be passive aggressive and say, okay, yeah, whatever. All right. But if you can get in the right key, which is team unity, harmonious, then you can say anything. If you're not in the right key with your kids, it's like hitting your head against the wall, isn't it? Or a spouse or a friend or whatever it might be. It's very difficult. But if you can be in the right key, then you can say anything. So the essence of this is living in the right key. And on the next slide, I have a visual I want you to have in mind, and that's an orchestra. We want to have the kind of relationship that's harmonious. Now, the beautiful thing about an orchestra is they're not all playing unison. They're playing off the same sheet of music. So they've agreed on kind of the rules, the music to play, but they're all using their gifts and abilities and playing this beautiful music in a harmonious way. So they're blending with one another. They're making a beautiful sound. They're actually creating, again, a masterpiece as a team as they're working together using their individual gifts and abilities, listening to one another, responding to one another, helping one another, blending with one another. And that's really what we want to do. That's the right key. But so often we don't live in the right key. We end up living in a discordant way. We're not only not singing the same song, but we're singing it very differently and in competition with one another. So let's illustrate that for a second. I've learned over the years the best way to do this is with some kind of Christmas song. So we're going to actually sing two songs together. This half, right here, right down here, you guys over here, we're going to sing. There's a pretty song. Deck the halls with boughs of holly, that la 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 la. Okay, we're going to sing that. You guys follow me. We're going to sing it. And if you can do it, do it with harmony, soprano, alto, bass, tenor. Do it. If not, don't worry about it. You guys are going to sing Jingle Bells. I don't care when you start or how you do it, but anyone can go. But we're going to be better than you guys. Okay, that's all I'm going to say. Okay, ready? Deck the halls with boughs of holly, fa la 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 la. 'Tis the season to be jolly, fa la 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 la. Down we all are gay a barrow, fa la 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 la. Old ancient Yuletide carol, fa la 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 la. Yeah, you morons, you guys. I tell you, that is often what teams are like. Now, not in your phenomenal company, but in many companies and in many families, you're not only not singing the same song or singing off the same song sheet, but what happens is you get in competition, and one group's going louder than the other. Actually, that sounded better than I've ever heard people sing two songs at the same time together, so that's to your credit. But basically, there's no listening to one another. There's no kind of mutual submission to one another that you have when you have a harmonious relationship. No deferring to one another, no supporting one another, no trying to make the others, sound beautiful and stick to the melody line, which you want to always elevate in a song. And so we want to talk about how we live in the right key. In the right key, you can say anything. That's that harmonious, melodic, beautiful team unity that we are talking about. So when we talk about team unity, the right key in relationships within a company or within a family or any relationship, we're not talking about union. We know people can live under the same house or be in the same office but not have unity. We're not talking about unanimity where everybody agrees on everything. Again, I've been married 45 years, and my wife and I certainly don't agree on everything. We disagree on a bunch of things. So it's not about unanimity. It's not about uniformity, everybody looking the same. It's about unity. It's that intangible, harmonious, dynamic, wonderful relationship that creates incredible power. So let's talk about how we do that, how we live in the right key. On the next slide, what I want to do is walk through some core skills. And again, I'm just blasting through these and giving you a feel for some of these skills because I believe, again, habits, good disciplines that become good habits result in success. And so I think we need to become skilled in these things. Caring, we've got to be skilled at caring for people if we're going to have team unity. We've got to be skilled at complimenting. That makes some of you nervous because you feel like it's flattery. I'll talk about that. We need to be skilled in expressing confidence. We need to be skilled at connecting with people. So we're hearing them and they're hearing us, and we're actually communicating, connecting. We need to be skilled at coaching. Increasingly in the business world today, we've got to be really good. You all have to be good at coaching your teams, not just in their competence, but their business competence, but sometimes in their own personal lives and relationships and how they make those work and how they identify their own strengths and grow and develop. And we've grown up, we have an increasingly dysfunctional cultures, and so we have a need for that, particularly with those entering the workforce today. And then collaborating, where we're working together. They're all, skills you all use to one degree or another routinely, but they need to be honed, I think, always and get better and better. So the first one's caring. And I'm going to use visuals on the next slide. I'll use visuals for each of these so it can kind of stick in your mind. And the visual for caring, I want you to get this in your mind. I want you to think of a nursing mother who's tenderly caring for her child. That's the visual I want you to get. Guy knows a little bit about this because he and Andrea just had a baby. 2 months? 2 months. And though I don't think you're breastfeeding the child, you know what it's like having a nursing mother tenderly caring for a child. And there's something about that metaphor that's a great metaphor. Just think of how a mom loves her child and cares for him, particularly a nursing mom. I watched my wife nurse when we had young children, and she'd simply just kind of run over little baby's cheeks and she would just hold them, and she'd concentrate on them and on their behaviors, and she'd sing to them and say words to them and just cuddle them. And there's just something really powerful about that kind of caring. Now we're gonna model that for a minute. Here's what I want you to do. We're gonna demonstrate caring and non-caring. So the way I want you to do it, I want you all to stand up for a second. Okay, stand up. You get to move around a little bit, and I want you to spend a minute just walking around. I want you to behave. Don't laugh, because some of you will start laughing. I want you to behave like you don't care about anybody in this room. In fact, you don't like anybody in this room. Okay? You don't need to say anything. This is all nonverbal. Act like, you dislike everybody in this room. Okay? But walk around and just like a whole bunch of people. Go, 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 go. Okay, stop. Okay. Okay, so you just went through that experience. Now I want you to act like you care for everybody in this room. Everyone you see, they're like long-lost friends. You're just your closest friends. You really care for them. You love them. You're deeply interested in them. Control yourselves, but go, 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 go. Now, so what was the difference? Noise, yeah. Caring was more noisy, obviously. So when you didn't like people, you were moving around, what did it feel like? What were some of the behaviors going on? Cold. Yeah, distant. Not a lot of touch, right? Probably none. You didn't want to touch anybody, right? No eye contact or mean eye contact, but yeah. And then when you liked everybody, what went on? Smiles. A lot of hugging. Now, by the way, some of you really like that, and some of you really didn't like that. I saw a few of you like, someone would come toward you and you go, And then some of the rest of you would just, you would just want to hug up a storm. I mean, that's a lot of times background, temperament, all that kind of experience. But that's a very different dynamic. But energy-wise, which one was better? Duh, right? When you care for people. By the way, the point of caring, I want you to think, I use caring intentionally because the way we love people or care for people differs. I think we ought to be, warm and affectionate, all that kind of thing. But I do think people receive caring differently. There's a book out called The Love Languages. Have any of you read that, The 5 Love Languages? There are 5. Let's see, it's acts of service. And by this is the way people perceive love. And the way you ought to love people is the way that they receive it the best, tangibly. So words of encouragement, acts of service, gifts, touch, and what's the other one? There's a 5th one. Time, yes, time. So someone who gives you time. Now, my wife, years ago, for years, I would bring her roses. And finally one day, we've been married like 15 years. She goes, honey, you don't need to bring me roses anymore. I go, why not? That's what you do if you love someone, your wife, you bring them roses. And yellow roses, you like yellow roses. She goes, I do, but they die. I don't care that much about roses. So I said, well, what do I do? She goes, wash the dishes or put the dishes in the dishwasher. I go, what? She goes, yeah, that is, for her, it's acts of service or it's quality time. That's the one, quality time. And that spells love for her. And so I've learned I need to love her that way. Now, honestly, I don't care that much about either of those personally. It's just the way I'm wound. For me, it's touch. That's my primary love language. So we had 2 dogs, Homer and another little odd dog, Ollie. And one day we were watching the news, and I was in my recliner, and Mary was lying down on the couch over that way on her back, and Homer was lying on her stomach, on his back, and she was sitting there just scratching his belly. And I looked over there and went, and she goes, what's that? I said, I said, yeah, Homer could do the dishes. I said, no, can I come over there and lie on your stomach, and can you scratch my belly? And she said, you want me to treat you like a dog? I said, yeah. Because touch is my love language. So that's my primary love language. I'm a hugger, and so it's that's why for me we have a couple of dogs now, and they're just with us all the time, and I love it's healing for me to have a dog on my lap, and just pet them. It's just the way I'm wound. So you want to find out if you haven't read the book, The 5 Love Languages, great. Just go on Amazon, find it, read it. It's a great tool, but you want to love people the way they experience love. You want to care for them that way. And then there's all sorts of tangible things you can do, but caring is one. The second one is complimenting. Now, by complimenting, I don't mean a flattery. I don't think we ought ever flatter. Flattery, the distinction is flattery is when you say something to someone for a wrong motive. You want to get something out of them, or you're being gratuitous or being selfish about it. You don't do that. That's inauthentic. It's not healthy. Complimenting is when you find something in someone that's a great quality and you articulate it. It's just a deep word of appreciation. In the United States, the American Family Association did research some years ago, and they asked parents how many positive versus negative statement did they make to their kids, and they found the average parent made 10 negative to every 1 positive. And then they asked 4th grade teachers in a different survey, how many positive statements does it take to overcome a negative, if you really can? And they said 4 positive to overcome 1 negative. So think about the deficit that so many children grew up with, maybe you did, where there are a lot more negatives than positives, and yet it takes so many more positives to overcome the negatives. Well, that's why complimenting is so critical in our culture. It's finding something someone does well and articulating it to them personally, behind their back, in front of other people, in verbally, in print. I compliment people. I work hard at this, and it's a core competency now. It's an unconscious competency, but I do it as a way of life. So I compliment a service provider. I compliment people at the restaurant last night. I try to find things people are doing well, and I try to articulate them. I don't ever try to do it inauthentically. I try to do it because I care, but I've just found it's a very powerful tool. And a good compliment, by the way, I think has three elements. It's concrete, it's specific. It's not like you're a great person, but hey, I really appreciate your attitude in doing this, or your follow through on these projects, or hey, thank you for being open and honest with me, whatever it might be. It's concrete. It is usually character or competency based. I don't think you want to just focus on, the physical or looks. You want to focus on things people can change, maybe character and competency, a great attitude, someone who's really serving other people or helping, someone who's building teams, someone who's humble. And it ought to be continuous. It ought to be a way of life. Now, this has had a profound impact on my life. Here's my story. When I was a little kid, I was a little rascal. I grew up in Bremerton, Washington, near Seattle. We were kind of lower middle class people. My folks owned and operated a dry cleaners. I had a great home, older brother, younger sister. I was a middle kid. But I was a problem child. Again, not a dysfunctional home, but I was certainly dysfunctional. And part of the reason was when I was very small, I was very large, a little fat boy. My nickname growing up was Jelly Belly Jensen as a kid, so I had that for a long time. And I weighed so much that I'd get into fights all the time because kids would call me Jelly Belly, and I'd beat them up because I was bigger than them. And then I got in trouble in school. I never did well in school. I had never read a book before 7th grade. And that's only because I was in class, and Mrs. Axelson said, Ronnie, you turn in all these book reports, but your mom said she never sees you read, and I never see you read. How do you do it? And being swift of foot, I said, I'm just very fast. And she goes, really? And then Greg Schoenmeyer, my best friend to that point, behind me said, oh, Jensen, you told me you faked all those book reports. And so I got stuck, so I had to start reading books. But I learned I was dyslexic later on, and ADHD and all that, so I had some real issues. I almost flunked kindergarten. Do you know anybody who's flunked kindergarten? I almost flunked kindergarten because they said I was socially maladjusted, which meant I got in fights, which was true. I got through kindergarten. I made it through all grade school, but I was a solid D student. My brother brought me my 4th grade report card for Mr. Kono a few years ago, and sure enough, 8 classes, and there were 2 rows, and for performance, I got D, D, D minus, C minus, D, 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 D. I had a D average. But for effort, I got E for excellent, which was as good as you could get in all 8 of the classes. So think of what that says to a little kid. It says, Ronnie's really stupid, but he's maximizing his potential. And that was kind of my view of my life. I thought I'm a really stupid kid, and this is as good as it's going to get. I couldn't play Pee Wee football because I weighed too much. I got in fights all the time. And then between my 7th and 8th grade year, 2 things happened. One is a friend brought me to a conference center like this, and I had a spiritual experience. I was never a church guy, but I had a real spiritual experience that kind of grabbed my attention, so I got a perspective builder. That was key. But the other thing that happened that was equally as important and maybe more formative for me is that summer, a businessman in town started to work with some of us, kind of a big brother type of deal. And he'd meet with us and teach us stuff. I don't remember anything he taught us, but every time we met, he would find something in me that was good, and he would articulate it. I only remember 2. One time he said, Ronnie, you talk a lot, son. He said, now what you have to say isn't all that good, but you have verbal skills. And he said, one day you could become a speaker, a great speaker. I said, really? And no one had ever told me I could be good at anything. Another time he said, Ronnie, kids follow you. Now, son, you're not going in the right direction, but you've got leadership skills, and one day you could become a leader. I said, really? He goes, yeah. And just doing that, I think it was 12 weeks we met, but just doing that over 12 weeks, I mean, little teeny things, radically changed my perspective on how I saw myself and how I could grow. So between my 7th and 8th grade year, I went from D's to A's and stayed there through my postdoctorate work. I went from getting in fights, the student body president in the 8th grade, shocked everybody. I went from not being able to play sports because I weighed too much and was unmotivated to losing lots of weight and starting to play and excel in sports. Now, was I a better athlete? No. Was I a stronger leader? No. Was I smarter? Heavens, no. What was I? I was motivated. Why? Because somebody encouraged me. They complimented me. The word encourage means to breathe courage into people. And what I want to tell you is whether it's your kids or spouse or friends or coworkers, everybody longs to have courage breathed into them. And even the very best, at the very top of the heap, are struggling with issues, and they need someone to breathe courage into them. And so you need to make this a way of life. So complimenting. The third skill is expressing confidence. Now the difference is complimenting is finding someone's doing now and becoming a raving fan. Expressing confidence is seeing the potential for the future and what a person can become, and expressing your confidence in them. And that's a very powerful thing. So if you're married, guys, if you want your wife to be like a queen or act like a queen, treat her like a queen. Or if you have friends who that you want to see be more effective in leadership and more powerful in unleashing their masterpiece, then you treat them like that. You express confidence in them. Howard Hopman built a great tennis dynasty in Australia years ago, and he took a slow-footed guy and nicknamed him Rocket, and he took a weak guy and he called him Muscles. So Ken Muscles Rosewall and Rod Rocket Laver became two of the great tennis players in a tremendous Australian dynasty because someone simply visualized achievement or expressed confidence in an area of their weakness. And he got them to live in light of that and just radically change their thought pattern. There's a story about a school in New York City some years ago that was written up nationally. And this was, it was the worst class in arguably the worst school in the worst part of New York. These kids were seniors. They were on drugs. They were in gangs. They were violent. They were, D- students, only not Fs, so they could get them out of the system. And they would go through teachers about every 2 or 3 weeks. And about a quarter of the way into the year, they went through, I think, their 4th teacher. And they brought in a new teacher. And this was a brand new, newly certified young woman. And she came in and took that class and started to work with them. And the other teachers had a pool on how long she would last, and it ranged from 6 hours to 8 days was maximum. And she lasted the day and then a week and then lasted 2 weeks and lasted the month and lasted the quarter, lasted the year. The kids got out of their gangs, they got off drugs, they started to be kind of model citizens of politeness and civility. Their grades went from D- to C's to B's to a number of A's. They became just the entire group. The whole culture was dramatically changed. At the end of the year, the principal they were giving the Teacher of the Year award, and of course she won it. And as he gave it to her, he gave her the award and said to her, I just have to ask you what we all are wondering. And she said, what's that? How did you do it? And she said, how did I do what? How did you see such a transformation in these kids? And she said, I could never figure out why other teachers had a problem with them. And he said, what do you mean? He says, these kids are brilliant. And he goes, what? They're brilliant. And he goes, why do you say that? He goes, I know their IQs. And the principal said, I know their IQs too. And so she said, well, why then do you question what I'm saying? He goes, I'm confused. So she went over and got a grade book, brought a grade book over to him, opened the grade book and started to read through their name. Here is Sergio, 142. Here's Martha, 139. Here was Cecilia, 153. I mean, these were brilliant IQ scores. And she got through about 4 or 5 of them, and he said, that's not their IQ scores, that's their locker numbers. See what happened? She mistook that for their IQs. So she thought they were brilliant. And then what did she do? She treated them like they were brilliant. She expressed confidence in them. And what did they do? They behaved like they were brilliant. End of story. So that's the power of expressing confidence in people. And you all are working, I know you're all managers in one form or another in your professional life and certainly in your personal life too, but you have the opportunity to express confidence in people and just know the power of your tongue to build team, to build people, to unleash the masterpiece that is within the people there, because we don't come close to hitting our level of expertise or skill or impact, and I want you to be able to do that. The fourth thing is connecting, and that's where we first seek to understand, then we seek to be understood. Connecting is, I love this picture because you can see they're doing that, right? They're engaged, their nonverbals are positive, they're listening, they're interacting, they're communicating. It's when we're really connecting with people, and we know when we're doing that and when we don't, but that's a whole skill set. So learn to connect with people, learn to communicate, connect, relate to people, so you're trying to understand them, and then you're helping them understand you. By the way, this means that you deal in the feeling level. A lot of times, most communication really happens at the feeling level, and so often we tend to live at the fact level, but more intimate communication happens when we're able to communicate feelings. And I got to admit, it's really hard for me to communicate feelings. And the reason it is I have no clue what I'm feeling at any time. I really don't. I can't tell you what I'm feeling now. My wife will often say to me, honey, what are you feeling? And I'll go, fine. And she'll say, well, that's a great way to define sandpaper, but not a great way to define feelings. I said, that's as good as I got. I said, I feel okay. I feel pretty good. Every day when I do a journal, the first thing I do is write down feeling. This is how sad I am. I'm sure I should be in therapy. But I'll sit down and I'll try to define how I feel. And it almost always starts at the same place. Fine, great, good. And I've had to go on and Google, come up with a whole page of feelings, gradations of feelings, so I can try to identify a new word for my feelings, because I often don't know how I feel. And my experience is a lot of guys have a hard time understanding how they're feeling in a given moment. But if you're going to connect with people, you really need to get in touch to some degree with your feelings and be able to communicate at a level that's real. And that's going to take some digging for some of you, like it takes for me. I have to work on that all the time. The next one is coaching. I'm a big believer in coaching. I do a lot of coaching as well as speaking. And I like coaching because you're able to really help people grow and develop. And, in the business world, you need to obviously coach people in their jobs. You need to develop them and cultivate them. But increasingly, as I mentioned earlier, I think you've got to get really good at coaching people and the kind of stuff we're even talking about here. More of the whole what I call personal leadership effectiveness side of things. So they can keep growing as people, because you want them to maximize their potential, and so they can keep growing in relationships, so they can build deeper relationships and build more meaningful relationships and enhance team and be in the right key. And the way you do that is you help people identify where they want to grow, and then you help resource them with tools where you're coming alongside them and helping them grow and develop and build. So coaching becomes a big factor when we're building the right kind of key. We need to help elevate people, encourage them, and help them grow. And then the final area is collaborating. Collaborating is when we're all working together, and you all do that. You have teams where you're collaborating around things, and the difference is coaching is where you're helping people identify where they need to grow individually, and then you're providing resources and tools and maybe even your own insights on how they can grow and develop. And collaborating is where you're working together as a team, and everybody, is bringing their gifts and abilities to it, just like a good old jam session instrumentally, where people are bringing what they have to the table, and you're unleashing the masterpiece, if you will, of the entire group, but you're working together on those issues. So being in the right key is being able to live out, at least these tools will help you get down the road. So caring, complimenting, expressing confidence, What was the next one? What was it? Oh, yeah, connecting and then coaching and then collaborating. Okay, here's what I want you to do. I want you to find, again, 3 other people. This time I want you to do it in 4s. And I want you to try to find people that you normally don't sit with, but you know. I mean, you've been out here working together, so you don't need to know these people well, but find 3 other people, not people you would normally sit with or work with. And your exercise is to go around and compliment one another. So here's what you have to do. You're going to start with one person. So you take David and his group of 4, and everyone's going to write down David's name, and everyone's going to write down a compliment for him. And you're just going to write down the name of the other 3 in the group, and you're going to write down a compliment for them. And then you're all going to start with David, in this case, as the illustration goes. And one person's going to compliment him, another person's going to compliment him, another person's going to compliment him. So basically, you're going to be complimented by 3 people. I'd urge you to write down what they say. You may never hear this again, so write it down. This is going to be awkward for some of you because you just, this isn't something you're used to doing. But again, I've done this with groups all around the world. I remember being with one of the top development companies in their San Francisco office with all their executives, and we went around as we typically will do, and we took their group of 12, and everyone received a compliment from everybody else, which was very counterintuitive for this development company. And in this case, half the group was in tears. I mean, it was very strong men and women, but they had just never done that before. And it's a great gift to learn to do. So kind of work through your fear barrier or nervous barrier about it and just do it. You say, I don't know this person well enough to compliment them. Well, figure out something. You're smart. So you'll get it done. So the action step is find 3 other people that you normally might not sit with and just grab them and pull them aside somewhere. And then get around a table, and then each one of you will compliment everybody else in the group, but do one at a time. So start with David, everyone compliment him, and then go to the next person, everyone compliment him, and give yourself some time to write down the compliment before you give it, and then write down whatever people say about you at the same time. We've got about 20 minutes or so to work on this, so do it. Okay? Go, go, go.